Thomas works with small and middle market businesses nationwide, helping them identify, mitigate, and transfer critical risks in an era of growing digital threats. His expertise spans complex coverage strategies, compliant alignment, and protecting customers against financial fallout against cyber attacks, data breaches, and operational disruptions. Known for blending tactical risk insight with real-world business acumen. Oh, I said that's weird. Thomas brings practical, no-fluff perspective to a modern insurance and how companies can proactively guard their bottom line. He's been a trusted advisor to dozens of executive teams across multiple sectors and is passionate about helping leaders move from reactive to a resilient in a risk posture. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Thomas to the stage. All right, I think I am the last. I'm pretty sure I'm the last. Before we get to have more drinks. So, good. Well, then everyone should have a drink, including myself. What am I doing? All right, so for those that don't know me, my name is Thomas Kleinschnitz. I have been in the world of insurance for 12, 13 years. Started off on my own. I sold that and went into the business world pretty quick. I've always had a passion for businesses, so it was an easy fit for me. Insurance typically is like the worst topic of any of these talks. Most people tend to vacate. So I'd like to start with a little joke, so bear with me. I have 6 kids, so I'm full of dad jokes. They really like this one, even though the wife didn't think it was appropriate. We're going to run with it. All right? So, there's an older couple sitting in bed at night watching a Vikings game. Okay? The old man lifts his leg up, lets one fly. Looks over to the wife and smiles. 7-0. The wife, been married a long time, knows what's going on. She smirks back and says, all right, I'm ready to play. She lifts her leg. 7-7. A few minutes go by. Old man does the same thing. 14-7 marks. Well, she's ready. She lifts her leg. 14-14. Now, before too long, she squeaks a little one out. Field goal. 17-14, she says. And the old man hasn't lost in their 45 years of marriage, and it wasn't about to losing out. So he's trying pretty hard. He's pushing. And unfortunately, unexpectedly, a little bit more than came out than it was supposed to. Now, wife looks over at it, eyes about as big as you could think. What in the world is that? He smirks and says, halftime, change sides. Hopefully that wasn't too inappropriate for you. So, first off, this topic obviously is about IT, technology, cyber. We're going to end there. They did kind of ask, maybe do a possible 101 on the insurance market. Does anyone care about that? Outside of cyber, does anyone care about regular insurance? I'm getting no response. 1. Okay, well, for the sake of the one in the room, we'll make this really, really fast. I get a lot of questions, especially today, is why the heck are my insurance rates going up? And they've been going up for 5 years. Okay, well, let's talk about that. All right, if you have any type of property, an insurance company, believe it or not, even though they make millions of dollars, have not been profitable, most of them, in property in 6 years. All right? Why that is, go back 10 years. For the United States of America, the total amounts paid out for property claims specifically. Think of every insurance company, all 50 states. The total amount paid in a 12-month period was about $70 million in 1 year. Okay, let's go back to a hurricane that hit Florida. The hurricane that rolled up into the Carolinas, right? Individually, those storms were about $50 million in damage, just the one. Catastrophically, right? Insurance companies cannot raise rates fast enough to make up what is being lost. Okay? That's property. All right? We also have this thing called nuclear verdicts. Anyone know what a nuclear verdict is? Perfect. All right? A nuclear verdict is an outrageous verdict that is, frankly, is unrealistic. Let me give you an example. So, this was not a client, thankfully, because it probably wouldn't be a client anymore. I don't even know if they're in business. But there's a fairly large crane contractor in Miami. Okay? They are lifting up an HVAC going on a multi-story building. The crane itself malfunctions, the HVAC system falls, and unfortunately, one of the employees died. Young guy, about 28 years old. The family sues the contractor for negligence. Okay? Now keep in mind, 27 years old, not married, no kids, basically no net worth. I don't even think he owned a home. The family sued and was awarded $45 million. That's a nuclear verdict. Florida is one of the worst states for nuclear verdicts. Okay, that's why your auto insurance is 10x in Florida. For anyone who wants to go move to Florida to retire, be prepared to pay a lot more. Okay, so that bounces into our excess and our umbrellas. All right, so there are two areas where the insurance companies and carriers, even though at the end of the day they're still making billions of dollars, but they're losing hundreds and hundreds of millions by the second in just those two areas. Okay, still with me? So far, so good? All right. Okay, so let's start to talk cyber. Usually I have to lay a pretty good groundwork, and everyone did that before me. So, where cyber insurance comes into play is when there is a claim. And it's getting to a point where it's not an if, it's a when. You saw a lot of the statistics. Over 60% of small businesses are hit in a 12-month period. Michelle had the stat, right? If it's a small business, almost half close within 6 months. Why is that? The average cyber claim is $750,000. How many of you could handle a $750,000 bill due tomorrow? What would that do to your cash flow? Right? You can't not pay it. You don't have a choice. So if you don't have any type of insurance in place, you're on your own. All right? Let's break down insurance a little bit and why cyber insurance specific is unique and why it's important. So if anyone has a business here, I'm sure you have a general liability policy, right? If you do not have a separate cyber insurance policy, a cyber specific, what I call a cyber true policy, right? You are at risk. If you look, you might call me and say, hey, look, I have cyber coverage on my GL. It shows it right here. Okay, $50,000. Okay, let's talk about that. One, $50,000 is pretty short of $750,000. Two, I'll ask you, does it cover forensics? Does it cover attorney fees? Does it cover third party? And I'm sure you look at me like you're looking at me now, what the heck is that? All right, let's break that down. You, the business, first party. I am a hacker and I attack you and I hold you ransom, all right? You're first party. If I hack your system and then I go through your system to your clients or people you know, that's third party. 65% of cyber claims that's paid out is third party. I had a client about 8 years ago. Unfortunately, it was an IT firm, not AGC. All right, they were in cities. Okay, they got hit Friday night. By Tuesday morning, when they discovered it, $5 million loss. Out of the $5 million loss, only about $800,000 was them. So over $4 million was third party. What the attackers did is they went through their system and they went into their customer systems and they attacked them as well. When forensics gets in there and they figure out where the source was, that source is liable. So that IT company was liable for all loss, business interruption, and income, or any forensic costs and attorney fees for all the businesses that were affected in their claim. Unfortunately, they only had $3 million of coverage. They had a very large bill. Thankfully for them, they were part of PE and they had some backup, so they were able to keep the doors open. But it was a very, very scary moment that happened, right, in real time. Let me give you a case study. Contractor in Wisconsin. I said in his presentation last year. Pretty common claim for construction, similar to banking, is cyber terrorists will actually get in and then be quiet, and they'll wait for their moment, right? Simultaneously, they will actually research. So they will go to websites and say, oh, well, this person is, I figure out this person's name, and then I will go to their Facebook, and I will go to the Twitter, and I will find all things, and I will actually slowly collect data, so then I can set up the perfect email when it's ready. This is what this terrorist did. He blasted an email. You know, they actually were in for almost 18 months. Never knew it. Terrorists finally blasted an email company-wide. They were shy of 300 employees. Out of the 300 employees, only 12 opened the email, and 1 clicked the link. All right? 90% of cyber claims is social engineering. All right? But he had put in enough information that 40-year, 10-year employee stopped and looked at it and was like, this is real. Click the link. And he clicked the link, shut down the entire operation. They had no electronics. 2 weeks solid. They had to pay customers by check. They had to hand deliver everything. The loss of business interruption for that contractor backed him up almost 6 months. That was $1 million claim. All along. All right? I'd like to stop and ask questions. Anyone have questions so far? I think I'm doing an okay job now. All right. I had the privilege, I guess this was last year too, where we actually brought in, not this firm, I was at a different one. I worked for a larger firm that had a lot of large clients for a while. So we actually brought in, we flew in an FBI agent, and he actually brought up the dark web right in front of us in a room exactly like this to about 50 or 60 clients. Note, if you've never seen the dark web, I was incredibly disappointed. I was expecting something like The Matrix, something very cool, something very flashy, a lot of marketing. It was incredibly boring. It looked like an Excel spreadsheet in black and white, all right? But it had everything you could possibly imagine. Data, unfortunately, was like the nicest thing out there, all right? But we got to walk through it, and what was very interesting is that there's a whole different world for cyber terrorism. There are actually countries where you can go if you live there, because I don't know for sure if you're an American to try to leave and go, but the FBI agent picked on Russia, for example. You go, you're a hired employee. Russia, the government actually pays businesses for cyber terrorism. They have hundreds of employees, 401ks, retirement accounts, paychecks for W-2 employees, health insurance. And their job is to just find data and access points to businesses or personnel across the globe. They collect this data, they create a profile on the black market, and they look for buyers. Again, it's everything you think, from people, to data, to weapons, you name it, it's the black market. It's not exactly a good place. All right. What was interesting, I think, to me most, was that, here we are with the FBI agents, our first question is like, you got him, right? And he's like, no, we don't got him. All right, they're fake profiles, but they do a very good job, and they're able to typically find out who's who eventually. But he used the example of the mob. He's like, you go back to the really bad days of the mob, all the local cops on the street knew who the mobsters were. They could point them out to you. They could tell you who they are by name. But they couldn't do anything about it. They're in the exact same situation where even if they discover who this person is behind this fake identity, they can't do anything unless they physically catch them in the act. So, and another big part is that most terrorists are outside the United States. We are seeing an uptick in the United States as far as people in the States doing their own form of terrorism, but most of this is outside of our country, right? So now we have international laws that are in play, and things get very messy very quickly. Okay? I like it when my watch tells me it's spam. Very appropriate. Okay, am I missing anything so far? Any questions so far? No? Oh, all right. I think we're gonna get the drinks really quickly. So, all right, real fast. So the biggest takeaway I can leave you is get an insurance, a true cyber insurance policy. Okay? A true cyber insurance policy is going to provide coverage, right, with a much higher limit. I don't recommend anything under $1 million. Right? We just base the average claim of $750,000, you need $1 million. Okay, based on your size of business and the clientele you have, maybe you need more, but at least $1 million. Okay? What that's going to provide you, it's going to provide you, right, coverage for forensics. Forensics and attorneys are very expensive. Now, I'm sure no one's shocked to hear an attorney is expensive, right? But it is very expensive because they can practically charge whatever they want. To give you an example, last Christmas, I had a client, $1 million claim, $500,000 was a ransom, $500K was a forensics and attorney. Okay? If you only have what's covered on your GL, one, you're not going to have enough to cover a claim. You're also not going to have any coverage for the forensics, and you're not going to have any coverage for the attorneys. All right? Now, if you're smart enough to work with these guys in the blue, right, you'd have some help on the forensic side. All right? But can't stress enough to get a true cyber policy if you don't have one. They're really not as expensive as they used to be. Claims have, I wouldn't say they've gone down, they're not going down, they're going up. But the structure has changed, all right? And a lot of businesses are starting to listen to like these guys in blue, MFAs getting put in place, other technical items are getting put in place, right? Which has reduced the risk. Insurance companies all about risk. Lower risk you are, lower the cost is. Right? To give you an example of cost, you got a $4 million contractor now out of town. His gross revenues are $4 million. He's got nothing in place. No MFA, no IT, nothing. About $3,800 for the year is his cyber policy. If you had MFA in place, you can cut that in half. Right? So they're not crazy expensive. All right? So $2,000, that saves you $1 million. I don't get that many wins in insurance very often, so I strongly urge you to put something like that in place. Okay? Any questions?
Is there any risk analysis before they write policy?
Yes, there is an application. All right? 17 pages is a little bit dramatic. I think it was 15. Okay? And her business is a little bit different. So it's different per business. All right? If you are anything in IT, anything in healthcare, anything in your top 10. So which is going to be, I'm not going to know all top 10, but healthcare contractor is actually increasing, just outside, I think they're 11 or 12. But healthcare, IT, accounting, anything that does holds a lot of personal data, right? The underwriting is a little more tougher. Okay, not that you can't get covered, but you will have more questions to answer than someone who is a landscape. I mow grass, right? They're going to be a little bit different, okay? Any other questions?
How can you lower the cost of this insurance? Might be a loaded question.
Phil set up on that one. You lower the cost by having the right pieces in place, like having a company like AGC help you out. So just that example of a contractor, right, 3,800 with nothing in place, half that with just MFA alone in place, okay? What I will say though is if you have MFA and yada and yada and yada and yada and all these pieces in place, are you going to be dramatically less than the guy who just has MFA? Unfortunately not. You at least need the basics. Okay, well, what that does, not to discredit it, all right? Cyber terrorists are playing a game of law of large numbers. They are looking for the easiest access point, which is why we're seeing over 60% of small businesses get hit. Target, even though it's been hit how many times, they have everything under the sun they could possibly pay for to prevent a cyber event. Okay? Small businesses, a lot of times, don't have much of anything in place. It's a much easier gateway to get in. And why we'll see more third party, which is why the insurance coverage is so critical, is because let's say you're a really small business, maybe you gross $100,000 to $200,000 a year. All right, that cyber terrorist is not going to attack you and ask for $5 million. You're not going to pay it. You don't have it. They might ask you for 50, but I'm asking for 5. But what they know, based on what your business is, well, you're only worth 50K, but the clientele you work with can generate me 5. So I will sit here and I will wait until I can get access to an item that allows me to penetrate your clientele. And then I'll hit you. Does that make sense? Any other questions? I have no idea if we're in time. We're at like 15 minutes.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So, on cyber insurance, some of our structured, so you have a $1 million policy, let's use your example.
Sure.
$1 million policy, 500,000 with ransomware, 500,000 with forensics. But there are some, I think, that cap it based on, I mean, you might have $1 million policies, you might not get 500,000 or 500,000. Don't they have some where they cap it at the line items, or is it different?
So, yes and no. All right, depends on the type of policy you have. Everything I write is going to cover up to whatever limit you select. $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. All right. But again, using just the GL example where it's a throw-in coverage, you're paying $300 for 50 grand. All right. They might even have, well, here's a third-party coverage. You got $5 grand of third-party coverage. You got 10 grand for forensics. Right? It looks good on paper for someone who doesn't know what to expect. And there are larger policies where you can structure them in that fashion. I typically don't run against those until I'm talking to a larger business who actually is up against the potential of they might have a $20 million plan. They're not going to spend $20 million on forensics. They're not going to spend $20 million on attorneys. At least I don't know. Right? So we would structure it, $20 million cap limit with a $2 million forensics, $2 million, right? And really that is an opportunity to save costs. Right. $20 million policies is a lot more than $2,000. Any other questions? These are good. All right. Well, I hope that I brought you a laugh and some good information. I appreciate your time, and let's have a drink.